That's what they were saying. What do you mean? The goal here is to kick off as many people off of Medicaid coverage as possible. The f are you talking about? Saying that these people are directly in the crosshairs and using those numbers is not inappropriate at all. By every single American. Yes, I said fat on accident. I was reading chat and I accidentally read something in the chat. Shut up. Stupids. Shut up, stupids.
Offensive as the woos hold out Republicans going on to say Mr. Trump has many ways of making members do what he wants. The all-powerful party boss can be frightfully vindictive. Republicans live in constant fear.
From Florida. How many people are going to get kicked off of healthcare in the state of Florida? Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Let's look at those numbers, baby. Get those numbers up. Get those numbers up. We got to get those numbers up, baby. In the state of Florida, okay, in the state of Florida, 1.9 million, almost 2 million people are going to lose their health care in the state of Florida. Let's see how he's responding.
The president came in and was trying to work with members to get them comfortable. You put those two things together with the...
At this point, it's just autopilot. They do Reaganomics every time. Everybody knows it's fake. Everybody knows it's phony. It doesn't even matter, though. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Who is this for? He's just saying. He is just saying the... he's just saying the talking points. That's it. And it doesn't even matter. Most people don't even realize the devastating impact. Okay? Most people don't even recognize the devastating impact. They're too busy. They're too poor. They're too broke to take... they're too slammed to their podcasts in between the Uber deliveries that they're doing. And the podcasters are telling them, you know, trans people are killing you. They're killing your children. Undocumented migrants are going to do decapitations in every corner, and Trump, our big, beautiful president, is going to end it all. So then they're just hyper-focused on that. They're lasered in on this nonsensical bullshit in an alternative reality to realize that, like, the government just stole their money, okay? The White House website tax calculator only calculates the no tax on tips and overtime elements of their plan. So if you're a salaried worker or self-employed and go to their site to see how the bill will, you will see. One small victory in this hellscape is Elon cratering the Wisconsin Supreme Court election means we finally struck down the 1800s abortion ban here in Wisconsin. The dumbest tweet today. You'll notice all the Democrats will put out tweets that are basically the word for word the same. My favorite part of the talking point is blank million people will lose their health care. Pay special attention to the word of choice. Word choice of people. They won't say Americans because it's not Americans losing, it's the illegals. What are you saying? What are you saying? Undocumented migrants cannot take advantage of Medicaid, you animal. Shut the f up. What are you saying? There are no migrants on Medicaid. They're just lying. This is so stupid. Oh, my Lord. Holy moly. All right, let's take a look. Who benefits from Trump's mega bill? The ultra-rich, Dem lawmaker says. Let's take a look.
Bring in now Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California. He's the newly minted ranking member of the House Oversight Committee. Congratulations on that election, Congressman. I wonder if Leader Jeffries, as we continue watching him here on the floor, gave any of you a heads up about what this magic minute would actually become here.
Yeah, I mean, look, first, we're incredibly, obviously, proud of the leader.
I've been a new third party, a new party announcement came. Holy shit! Finally,
in that chamber, we've all been with him there. He's been now at it, I think, for over 7 hours, and he's out there not just speaking against a horrific bill for the American public, but he's also giving and creating time for folks to flood these offices. Calls are going into members' offices.
Hasan, you know it's not every single person getting kicked off Medicare. Of course, that's the Republicans' end goal, but that's not what's happening here. Don't you think that hinders the message against this bill? What are you saying, dude? What are you saying? When the Republican Party was actively campaigning against Obamacare, okay, they said there were death panels. That's entirely made up, okay? That's not a real thing at all. They said there were going to be death panels where they choose a bunch of gay libtards with MDs are going to choose which Republican grandparent gets murdered, okay? Gets euthanized, gets put down. That's what they were saying. What do you mean? The goal here is to kick off as many people off of Medicaid coverage as possible. The f are you talking about? saying that these people are directly in the crosshairs and using those numbers is not inappropriate at all. My man, how have you not lost your mind covering this shit every day? Because I don't know. New reporting reveals that Republican, what? No, this is dumb shit. I don't know. The reason why I'm not losing my mind, I guess, is because I already know that this is devastating. And I already know my expectation is that Americans are going to be American politicians are always going to be absolute dog shit to the working class. Maybe I have lost my mind though, honestly. And I have lost my mind. What am I saying? I've lost my mind. I think that there is a change that we could actually implement in this stupid ass country. So I must be a little crazy. You got to be a little crazy to think that we can actually move this country in a positive direction where we do right by others, or we do right by the working poor. So yeah, I'm a little insane. I'll be real with you. You got to be a little insane to hold out hope when things seem so hopeless.
We are eliminating the waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. We want this program to be there for constituents like mine, like Emmeline and Parker, disabled children who need access to these benefits. They shouldn't be going to a 29-year-old guy who's living in his mom's basement. These benefits will be preserved thanks to the work of President Trump and Republicans. We're continuing to stand up for hardworking families.
Yeah, I think Medicaid was the biggest cause of fear for Americans across the country.
My MAGA uncle went full Hitler on Facebook today, saying it didn't matter that 10 million people lost healthcare coverage because if they were on Medicaid to begin with, they didn't deserve to be here alive. Nice. I just don't understand what causes someone to unironically operate like that. Like, how do you arrive at this conclusion? How are you a person that genuinely believes this? And it's also the exact same mentality that these guys have. First pick in the 2025 alligator Alcatraz draft. Like, they're dumping alligators outside of the concentration camp, the death camp that they're going to have for migrants. Hell yeah, baby. It's like, how do you look at that kind of transparent cruelty and you think to yourself, this is good?
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't understand how someone becomes so selfish and so resentful and awful as a human being.
Yeah, well, I just think it's interesting that all of a sudden people voted for Thomas Massie. Like, I don't remember voting for Thomas Massie with this. I remember voting for Donald Trump to get this bill passed. And I feel like a lot of Americans who voted for Donald Trump feel the same way, especially not only with Thomas Massie, but a lot of the other Republicans who are kind of leaning towards no. They didn't vote for these Congress people. They voted for President Trump. They voted for this.
I don't remember voting for Thomas Massie. Okay, I guess you're not from his district, you know? That's kind of how this works. I don't know if you know this. He is a Republican representative in the House of Representatives. That's just not how things work. This
mandate. And if you're going to vote no on this, then you're voting along with Democrats, especially Democrats like Maxine Dexter, who was on the Hill today dressed in a white robe, who also visited El Salvador to go see Robert Garcia, who killed Americans.
Who killed Americans? Robert Garcia killed Americans. I guess you could say whatever the you want. Dude, you can say whatever the you want about undocumented immigrants, okay? Or even if they have proper work clearance, like this guy's a literal union worker, okay, in the state. But because he's brown, you can say whatever the you want on TV. You could be like, oh, he's a murderer. Same with Zohran Mamdani, also brown, Muslim guy, socialist. He wants to kill all Jews. Maybe he has Jews. Maybe he has tasted the blood of Jewish children and he wants more. Who cares? No one's going to check me. I can say whatever the I want. It's crazy. It's actually crazy. You can say whatever the you want about black people, brown people. You can say whatever you want, dude. It's awesome. Great stuff.
That a lot of people are passionate about passing. If you're not siding with Republicans, then unfortunately you're siding with Democrats, anti-American.
Might be leaving.
Over $1 trillion cut from a program that covers 40% of American children while simultaneously giving a blank check to Lockheed Martin for their all-time dumbest proposal. In most democracies, you'd at least have plans to leave the country after voting for this bill. In some sense, I think this is their attempt at a solution for U.S. healthcare. Have as many Medicaid recipients as possible, but to try and start with the ones they feel fewer people will miss. In their minds, this includes those with children older than 14 too. Again, this traces back to Bush 2 almost verbatim. They got away with it, so I see no reason why these new fascist kleptocrats will ever have to care. Hell, they even rehabilitated the Bush admin over the ensuing decades after they immiserated us all and gave it to KBR. Yeah, zero prosecutions for any of the Bush people, as well as Obama being made entirely of populism-absorbing materials, was the hinge point. That sealed the deal on a country where the worst actors had zero fear of ever facing consequences. Yeah. Oh, she apologized. It's great, man. It's awesome. It's great. The working poor, you know. But guess what, dude? We got more money for some of the dumbest hogs out there who are going to be doing black bagging, kidnapping operations without even revealing that they're members of law enforcement. Okay. You got more ICE kidnap now. We will have more money for GEO and private prison contractors to set up concentration camps. More alligator Auschwitz all around the country. It's going to be awesome. The dudes who are working outdoors in 100-degree weather so you can get avocados, okay? The dudes who are picking those fruits and shit, they're going to get destroyed. They're going to be ripped away from their families, from their way of existence. They're going to get detained, kidnapped, and sent to El Salvador. I work at a CHC in Washington that serves over 100,000 Americans yearly with a over 50% Medicaid population. Would love to send you some data we put together for advocacy. Didn't Trump just say we got so much money from the tariffs? Why aren't they at least using that rhetoric to say the deficit will be reduced by that revenue? What? Because it's also fake. It's fake bullshit. I'm telling you, yesterday, we were doing rain dances. We were praying for rain, divine intervention to actually somehow disrupt this process. Because that is how powerless the average American is to stop these sorts of things. These events are in motion. There's nothing you can do about it. Many people are oblivious to it. Okay? Liberal democracy at least makes you feel like you have a say in this process, but you don't. If people were asked straightforwardly, like, do you think we should give a giant tax cut for the wealthy by cutting Medicaid for millions of Americans, by cutting SNAP benefits for millions of working poor Americans, I don't think there would be above a 10% approval for that, okay, in a straightforward referendum. No way, no how. But that's not how this stuff works. Pretty big, say in November, dude literally ran on this bill. Yeah, he ran on this bill. He did? Because if I recall correctly, he kept saying no cuts to Medicaid, no cuts to Medicaid. So no, I don't think he ran on this bill. You can say he ran on the tariffs. That's definitely true. But he absolutely did not run on cutting Medicaid so that rich people can get a tax cut. You don't have to defend Donald Trump on this especially. Oh my God, I'm on the tube. You're on the tube, lad.
As we understand, there are people calling into some of these offices that you're all talking about from the Republican side. And he's really, I think, bringing life to important stories from across the country. A lot of us expected him.
Yeah, he ran on a wall that Mexico was going to pay for. They didn't pay for it. He ran on tariffs that China was going to pay for. China didn't pay for it. He ran on mass deportations that were going to be great because there's so many criminals. They're not deporting criminals at all because all the criminals that are undocumented migrants have already been prosecuted and are either in prison or have been deported already. He ran on no new wars, no more wars. He ran on ending the wars. Wars are still going on. Look at Russia and Ukraine. Russia is making new gains on the battlefield. Israel has not even remotely stopped its genocidal ambition in Gaza. Donald Trump has actually leaned into that. Then on top of that, we also struck Iran, spending another $100 million to do that. Eggs are still expensive. Milk is still expensive. None of the prices came down. He lied about everything. And worst of all, you still got dumps running around being like, nah, dog, we're winning so much. Why are we winning? Because the libtards are mad. Brother, you're stupid. Nothing in your life improved. You just have made up a villain in your mind to get angry at, okay? Are you tired of winning? So much winning. Mr. President, please, no more winning. We've won so much.
To do something like this because he is that kind of a leader. But it's also really important for people to know that if this thing passes, 17 million people are going to likely lose their health care. Millions are going to lose their food assistance. ICE is going to be able to double the amount of detentions that they're doing across this country, targeting, as we all know, sometimes U.S. citizens and people with no due process. And all so that billionaires can get a massive tax cut. And so, I mean, we're incredibly proud of the leader. It may be that he breaks actually a record here in doing this, and it's a righteous cause to oppose this bill.
And there is, I think, a fascinating parallel for those of us nerds like me who love Congress to note that the record that he would be breaking if he makes it would be an 8-hour and 32-minute record set by Kevin McCarthy when he was in the minority leadership role back in 2021, and Democrats were in the process of doing their own reconciliation on Build Back Better, a very different kind of BBB legislation. But one key aspect of this bill is that...
I'm not kidding when I say this. I think if Democrats were real ones, they'd be doing like crazier shit. Like illegal things. Okay. If they truly wanted to stop this, they'd be pulling like fire alarms or some shit. They'd be getting arrested.
Some of the most painful spending cuts, you talked about them, Medicaid, food stamp changes, they don't actually kick in until after the midterm elections. So does that make it harder for Democrats to campaign against them? You're talking to people in theory and based on projections, not necessarily tangibles.
Now, I think people know what's happening with this bill. It's been very clear. I think that folks understand, and we're being flooded even in our offices with folks that are scared. They don't want to lose their health care. They understand the stakes of this bill. And so it's going to be very clear. Obviously, these will kick in a couple of years, the actual cuts themselves. But people know and are going to expect that their health care and American health care is going to move backwards, not forward. Less people will have coverage in this country, not more. And that is going to impact every single state across the country. Governors and states are going to have to make very difficult decisions about who stays on their state plans and what is actually funded. And so it is crazy to me to think that these Republicans are willing to throw their own constituents' health care aside so that their richest constituents can get a tax cut, so that Elon Musk can get a bigger tax cut, so that larger corporations can save and get more money, yet nothing for lower income folks, for middle class families who are looking at losing not just this, obviously, healthcare piece.
Like the ICE expansions are so crazy. ICE expansion in the interim, in the immediate, is a 20x increase from 2.2 billion to 45 billion. ICE's budget and the entire immigration enforcement budget is now, yearly budget, is now larger than the Russian military, okay? ICE becomes the highest funded federal law enforcement agency in history with more money per year at its disposal over the next 4 years than the budget of the FBI, DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals, and Bureau of Prisons combined. $75 billion for ICE detention and removal, $65.6 billion for CBP infrastructure, hiring, and tech, $10 billion for the DHS, Department of Homeland Security slush fund, $3.5 billion for state enforcement, and more. The total number that they gave immigration enforcement is $175 billion with a B dollars. $175 billion. Why is Donald Trump spending so much money on immigration enforcement? Well, let's take a look at what Donald Trump has been doing so far as immigration enforcement. Doesn't like when someone says something mean about Israel, boom, that's immigration enforcement. Look at Mahmoud Khalil. Okay? When this administration doesn't like someone, they use immigration enforcement as a tool. I've been detained by Customs and Border Patrol as a political dissident. I've been detained at the point of entry into the country because it is the immigration enforcement is the one aspect that has no legal control mechanisms in it. Okay, it is the way that Donald Trump can open up the floodgates of fascist control, fascist repression. 68% of Americans live in what the ACLU calls constitution-free zones. Okay, these are areas where BORTAC, which is like the SWAT team for ICE, and ICE agents and Customs and Border Patrol agents, and now, depending on how the Trump administration utilizes, even like HSI and numerous other federal agents, can basically operate without any sort of constitutional protections afforded to both the citizens and non-citizens alike. They can detain you, they can arrest you, and if the Trump administration moves on with their initiative of eroding due process, they can even ship your ass to another country and say, oops, can't return them. Sorry, we don't know what happened. Once you build a massive deportation machine, an industry really, it will not stop with one category of immigrants or immigrants at all. It will self-perpetuate new classes of people to detain, to fill the detention beds and meet removal quotas. It will create a meal to feast on. Look no further than the defense spending or the prison complex we built to sustain the war on drugs. The idea of creating a totalitarian police state with masked Stasi that disappears tens of millions of people, whoever the regime finds disfavorable at a given moment, is really unpopular. And the only people who actually want that are worthless rump of people like this. America's a white country. Whatever it takes to get back to that. Hopefully, American blacks. Good. Let's do socialists and communists next. Here's a pic of he and I. I'm 5'11", and he's at least 3 inches taller, so you're not telling the truth. Breaking. The Desden father charged with child cruelty and animal abuse after security cameras captured him threatening his daughter, now has custody again of the 15-year-old girl. This is the guy. This is exactly the type of person that the Trump administration is lasering in on when they do this kind of removal proceedings. Okay? Some of the worst scumbags of all time, just like animals, worthless animals, is always the worst piece of shit in your hometown that never left the hometown, that's doing child cruelty, pedophilia, and the like, that is excited at the prospect of undocumented immigrants getting shipped out, or even black people and brown people that are documented U.S. citizens getting shipped out of the country. How do you design a future for this nation state by looking at some of the cruelest, most inconsequential psychopathic individuals? It's insane. Here's another example of people just like this. Alligator lives matter. The good news is alligators are guaranteed at least 65 million meals if we get started now. The number of undocumented migrants in this country is not 65 million. The number of the Hispanic and Latino population in this country, however, is 65 million, saying the quiet part out loud. Now, if you were to say, come on, Laura Loomer is some edge case. She's been banned off of every social media application. She has no power in the Republican Party. Maybe you were right at a certain point in time, but Donald Trump has called her a free spirit after people were asking, why the f is Laura Loomer in your airplane, in your private jet, flying around and giving you advice? Laura Loomer herself has taken credit for all of the firings that took place in the Department of Homeland, not even the Department of Homeland Security, sorry, the national security apparatus in this country. She has Trump's ear. Animals that are actually convincing Trump to do shit. There are 65 million illegal aliens in the United States. Nice try, though. There aren't. Trump estimations that are bullshit says 20 million. The official estimation is 12 million. Millions of Americans set to lose health insurance as Trump bill passes the House. Millions of illegals, that is. These people are so stupid, man. They are so dumb. Oh my God. They will never understand what is destroying their lives. That's all it takes for these guys to be like back in the day, before the meta was blaming undocumented migrants for everything, was black people. Okay? That's what it was. You just say, well, black people are taking advantage of this, and the dumbest on the planet would be like, oh, I don't want it then. It's like, bro, you're using it. You're using welfare. What do you mean? Like, you're ready to cut out an eye if black people lose two? Is that what it is? Are you that stupid and racist? Some are. Some are. That's what the welfare queen mentality was about. Gutting social safety nets in this country that give people a leg up in their most desperate times, okay, that allow them to survive, was picked apart because, welfare queens. A black woman was taking advantage of the social safety net, so we have to take them away. I'm confused. Why are you surprised? Americans have always been this stupid. I'm not surprised. I'm just mad, dude. I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm angry at the ineptitude from the Democrats. I'm angry at the vicious nature of the Republicans. They are vultures, all of them. And then I'm mad about the fact that people still get duped by this shit when they're getting over. And you should be mad too. Oh, it is devastating. Yeah, the New Republic wrote an article. Trump apparently didn't know his own bill's extreme Medicaid plan. There's information coming out that he might not have even known that the additional provisions that they added on were gutting Medicaid, which once again doesn't matter because he knows now. He can't play dumb any longer, but he's still pushing it through. So obviously, he doesn't give a shit.
But also those that are on food assistance and so much else.
I will note that Musk has tweeted or posted, rather, multiple times against this bill. But I take your point about who could benefit based on these tax cuts. I also think the other piece of it that you touch on there is I've talked to several governors over the course of the last few days who say that it would be near impossible for their states to make up the lack of federal funding that would flow out of their state programs if this bill were to pass. But I also would challenge you, in the 900 some odd pages, Congressman, do you see any silver linings there? Does it make sense to you at all when Republicans say, well, we're stopping taxes from going up, noting the fact that it's their bill from 2017 in the first place expiring that would cause those tax rates to go up? But is there anything in here that you see as potentially good, even as you warn of all of the bad pieces?
No, because at the end of the day, even the things where there could be some agreement, for example, on taxing of tips, which is there's been some bipartisan support. It's not set up to be permanent. It goes away. It's complex for people to be able to report it. So even the pieces where Republicans are trying to actually create something where there could have been bipartisan support, they didn't work with Democrats. They did nothing to actually reach across the aisle. And at the end of the day, middle income people get absolutely nothing in this bill. All of the benefit goes to the ultra rich. It's the largest transfer of wealth from middle class Americans to the ultra rich in modern congressional history. Any bill that takes away health care from 17 million Americans should be dead on arrival, and yet it's going to sail through this Congress because Donald Trump wants it that way. He's interested only in enriching himself, his family, and his billionaire friends. And so I think this is actually a sad and shameful way to celebrate the 4th of July. I don't understand Trump's obsession with having the rich only get more.
Congressman Robert Garcia, thank you for joining us. I'm sure we'll see you on the floor in the background of those shots of Hakeem Jeffries continuing throughout the day. Thank you.
The Republican-controlled Senate today passed the president's massive tax cut and spending bill. According to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, the plan would add $3.3 trillion to the federal deficit over the next 10 years. Because spending...
The fact that so many people do not know what's in this bill screams that it was written with AI to drown substance with volume. No, it's just lobbyists. No, every part of the bill is written by hundreds, if not thousands, of lobbyists from each individual sector, think tanks that directly copy paste whatever their desires are. That's not how things work in Congress. It's not AI. It's real people writing these measures. Yeah, they're not going to leave it up to AI. What if they accidentally write something good in the provision? Oh my God. Because we all know nobody's reading it. AI is used when you want it to fail. Okay, when you want something to fail, when you want like plausible deniability or whatever, that's when you use AI. You don't use AI when it matters. God forbid.
Outpaces tax revenue, the government will have to borrow, and future generations will have to repay with interest. $3 trillion is a big number. So here's one way to think about it. There are about 97 million cars in America. If you wanted to buy every single one of those cars, you could do it with $3.3 trillion, and you'd have $400 billion left over for maintenance. In more practical terms, $3.3 trillion divided equally amounts to $25,000 for every household in America. Some of the biggest cuts in the president's bill will affect Medicaid. The joint federal-state program covers care for about 6 in 10 nursing home residents. Reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns has that story.
Jason Barrett visits his
65%. Your grandparents are no longer going to have, your grandparents are going to get kicked out of their Medicare coverage. They are no longer going to be able to pay for their nursing homes. They are no longer going to be able to stay in the nursing homes because the more people, the less people have money, the less people have this kind of health care to pay for the nursing home care, the less the nursing homes will be able to operate. What is this? Upside, downside? Downside is much worse for the country. 12 million people lose their health insurance. They cut $1 trillion from Medicaid to give $1 trillion people making over 500K. Upside is 99 GOP. You just cost yourself about 6 million votes. I think he's wrong. Like this is just like liberal. This is just like liberal fantasy. if that was the case, then Donald Trump would have never become president. Okay? He would have never become president again because Donald Trump already did this. He did this last time. Point. Okay? Unless the Democrats actually figure out that they have to be a real, true left populist party, there is no turning point. The people just become more resentful and easier to dupe year over year. This just happened. There was already an election where the Democrats lost to Trump. What makes people think that it's going to be different next time around? People are going to finally recognize that the Republicans are them over? Why would they? If they haven't for the past however many decades now, since Ronald Reagan, why would they recognize it now? They're not going to unless there is a real, strong opposition party that is genuinely invested in opposing the Republicans instead of just standing by the side and hoping that they will eke out a marginal victory every 4 years or sometimes 8. It used to be 8. Now it's going to be 4-year cycles, I suspect. What time will you be talking about something other than American politics? What? I know Jeremy Corbyn is creating his own new party. I know. We'll get to that in a little bit. Jesus Christ. I'm an American political commentator. I mostly cover American politics.
4-year-old grandmother Ruth Rainey at the Martinsburg Healthcare Center in West Virginia as often as he can.
What does she mean to you?
Well, she means everything.
Medicaid will soon be covering the cost of Rainey's care, putting her among the 77% of West Virginia nursing home residents who rely on it. Nationwide, that number is 63%. But that funding could be cut by roughly $1 trillion by the massive spending bill now in Congress. The concern is those cuts could lead to reduced staffing and tightened eligibility requirements in long-term care facilities nationwide. The House version of the bill would require states to fill the funding gaps, and some may come up short.
If there are changes or cuts to Medicaid, are you concerned about your ability to operate?
I would be.
Nancy Mason runs the nursing home where Ruth Rainey lives.
It helps to meet our operational expenses, everything from pharmaceuticals to food to utilities to recruitment of staff, all of our wages.
My MAGA cousin messaged me today about how disappointed he is because Trump said he wouldn't cut Medicaid and wouldn't start any new wars. I mean, yeah, good. Welcome them with open arms, okay? This is your opportunity. You have a unique opportunity to finally move these goddamn people away from the stupidity that is the Republican Party. Don't make fun of them and do the Fell for It Again award, okay? These are your loved ones, your immediate loved ones. Same goes for people who did not realize that Donald Trump was going to deport every Mexican person that is in the vicinity of a hot dog skinned ICE agent, okay? Neck fat bulging over their gaiters. Use this as a radicalizing opportunity. You probably have a better time convincing those people in the direction of a true opposition party than you do about like these liberals that still come in here and go, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris lost because she sucked, okay? She is more responsible than you as a voter and me as a political commentator for this devastation. She should have launched a better opposition and won so that we didn't have to deal with it. People are more ruthless about their favorite NBA teams than they are the Democratic Party. They don't even do team sports. It's something beyond team sports. They like develop parasocial relationships with politicians that don't give a fuck about them. It makes me crazy. Every Democratic Party voter is like a Jets fan. Year over year, they just keep getting dicked down. Doesn't fucking matter. Somehow we'll find a way. Somehow we have to act like, no, it's going to be different next year.
Essentially, everything that helps keep this place running and serving the residents here relies on that funding.
A large portion of it, yes.
We have to get to a place where we're balancing our budget again. I don't think we do that on the backs of nursing home residents.
Barrett isn't just a concerned grandson. He's also a Republican West Virginia state senator.
If the federal government changes the way that they contribute to the Medicaid program, essentially, do you think West Virginia can pick up the gaps?
Pick up those gaps entirely? No, I don't believe so. A complete backfill of cuts to Medicaid would be very crippling to our state budget.
Now, the bill's passage in the Senate today is really just one hurdle. Now the hard work begins. Before it can even get to the president's desk, it first has to go through the House. And some key Republicans over there say that they're opposed to it at this point, with a vote expected tomorrow.
Let's actually listen into the House floor. It looks like from the applause that they've just passed and finalized this bill. Let's listen.
Or wish to change a vote? No. On this vote, the yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
And with chance of USA Republicans securing arguably the biggest legislative win of President Trump's 2 terms. The final vote, 218 yay, 214 nay. Republicans getting this done and sending it now to the White House. Let's actually go there with CNN's Kristen Holmes. Kristen, I know the president was busy earlier with Idon Alexander, the American hostage that was released by Hamas earlier this year. Do you know if this has been watched closely by the White House, or was it presumed that it was going to pass?
I mean, Boris, it's been watched incredibly closely. We saw this into the night last night. We know that President Trump was working the phones after midnight. We saw him posting on Truth Social, essentially sounding exasperated. Why can't we get this done? This is a no-brainer. Republicans need to vote on this. They have been watching, they being the White House and President Trump himself, every single step of the way. Trump himself has been involved in this process with the speaker, with congressional leadership, but also with having conversations with House members. And I just want to take one step back before I go into the process here. This could not be a bigger deal for President Trump and for this administration. They believe that this bill really encapsulates everything President Trump wants to do.
Christians paying for the passage of a bill that will hurt the poor, sick, and children to help the rich. We live in hell, man. We live in hell. We live in hell. This is why I always say, or used to say this a lot more frequently, but I'm going to bring this old school Noam Chomsky take back. Republicans are the #1 terrorists on the planet. There is no greater terrorist entity than the Republican Party. One might say, well, the Democrats, Hasan, when it comes to foreign policy, certainly, okay? When it comes to their ineptitude, certainly. They're following along. But this is the one area where the Republicans are the best, okay? They are 1 million Al-Qaedas, okay? They are doing a 9/11 like weekly. I know I said it yesterday, but I used to say it a lot more frequently back in the day. The Republican Party is the #1 anti-American terrorist entity on the planet. The #1 terrorist entity on the planet in general, but like certainly an anti-American one too. Incredible stuff.
I mean, you've called the Republican Party the most dangerous organization on earth.
In human history. There has never, it's an outrageous statement, and when I said it, I said, look, this is a very outrageous statement, but is it true? But
you're rating them worse than the Kim Jong-un of North Korea or ISIS, who are very...
Is ISIS dedicated to trying to destroy the prospects for organized human existence?
Right, is that bad, the Republican Party?
What does it mean to say, not only we're not doing anything about climate change, but we're trying to accelerate the race?
Yes. Worse. What do you mean Kim Jong-un? Are you kidding me? It's not even a question, dude. It's not even a question. Yes. Far worse than Kim Jong-un. Hasan, you're a loser. Wave your gun around again. Don't worry. I will eventually. How many Iraqis did Kim Jong-un kill? Said Kim Jong-un is only terrorizing the bakeries. Yeah, and the cheese factory.
To the president.
And you don't entertain the possibility that they may be genuine in their belief that this is...
Doesn't matter whether they genuinely believe it or not. The people who genuinely believe that Christ is coming in their lifetimes do genuinely believe it. But if the consequence of that is let's use more fossil fuels, let's refuse to subsidize developing countries.
Bad timing. The day North Korea sent 30,000 soldiers to Ukraine. Dude, even with that, let's say every single North Korean killed a Ukrainian person. This is devastating. This is completely unacceptable, okay? Do you think it even reaches the Republican Party's death and destruction at the global stage? What are we talking about? Those are not even rookie numbers. That's incomprehensible. We're talking about 17 million Americans getting kicked off of healthcare in the wealthiest country on the planet so that rich people can have fat tax cuts. What are we? This is not even on the same planet, dude. It's not even close. And that's just domestic policy. People say, oh, Kim is like killing his own political dissidents. Sure, okay. The Trump administration just gave ICE $175 billion for immigration enforcement. What do you think that is going to be used for? It is going to make the Kim Jong-un dynastic prison state look like a kindergarten. What do you think that's for? You think it's not going to be used? You think $175 billion is just going to not be used at all? No, they're building concentration camps. They're funding the Gestapo, chatter. Wake the up. Jesus Christ. The cognitive dissonance of the Democrats is deafening. Governor Hochul rips Mamdani's proposed tax on the rich. I know. The ICE yearly budget is now larger than like virtually every other country's military. Okay? There's like 9 militaries that have a larger budget than ICE. That's one law enforcement entity in the country. One. Hasan was right about this since before the election. He called every step from the mass deportation to the camps. Yes, every step of the way. And it's not even just before this election cycle. I've been warning about this for a long ass time, dude. It's not even new. Not to be the liberal in chat, I'm not, but if you're earnest and your compass is the plight of the worker and laborer looking to run for something and run for something local politics determines so much of our daily life, and yet it's the most overlooked race. No, I don't think you're being a liberal when you say that. I say that all the time.
Do with his agenda, that his legacy is going to be sealed in some of the items that are in this bill. And that's why it was so important to President Trump to get this across the finish line. It has been something that has been weighing on the White House as they have been negotiating, having conversations, courting House members for months. I mean, I was told 2 days ago that they felt like they had these month-long relationships with House members, that they've been trying to address their problems for some time now. Now, the other problems with the bill, just to be clear, one of the other parts of this that I think might go unnoticed is how much this second term for President Trump is different than the first term. They have figured out in that 4 years that President Trump was not in office how to work the system in their favor. That was not something we saw during the chaotic first term. And, in the last couple of days, we've been talking about this nonstop, this idea that, is the bill on the verge of collapse? And every time I spoke to White House officials, they said they like their odds. They think that they are feeling optimistic. And when I ask why, they just point me to what we've seen for the past 6 months, which was anytime President Trump has wanted to get something done in Congress, even with people opposing it, almost every time he has been able to strong arm something through the Senate, through the House, that he wanted to get done in terms of his agenda. Now, part of that is there is a fear that President Trump, his team, will primary some of these House members. We saw that last night when he was posting online. He was kind of tapping into that fear. We also heard him directly say it when it came to Representative Thomas Massie or Senator Thom Tillis. But then there's also what we saw them doing behind the scenes, which was arriving at these meetings, the White House, with talking points for congressional leadership, for these House members who had serious concerns about parts of the bill. I spoke to one House member who was a no before they got to the White House. When they left the White House, they were a yes. And all the strong arming, all the threats, all of that, in their mind, after the conversation with the White House team and going through all the aspects of the bill, they came to that conclusion on their own.
They said that they were the ones who believed in the bill, even though they had been saying publicly that they were not sure about that. It was something that was very fascinating to hear. They understood how to talk to these House members in a way that they didn't the first term.
It's really interesting. I mean, what you're almost saying there, Kristen, is it's sort of like the president and those around him. They're effectively the majority whip, right? They are whipping these votes and twisting arms to bring everyone home.
Brianna, I don't know if that was directed at me, but I did lose IFB for about 2 minutes.
It was more an observation.
I was
just
trying to slyly call back in, but I wasn't.
Didn't even notice.
So
you are very smooth there.
I wish for a future where the Democrats fought like a fraction as hard as the Republicans do for evil shit. Okay? If Democrats fought and did politics like half as aggressively for all the things that they promised on the campaign trail, they would be the most successful party on the planet. They would never lose an election. Like, they would never lose an election ever again. They would be putting up FDR numbers once again. We would have New Deal Democrats re-implemented. The American political structure would change dramatically. It would most likely breathe back life into the empire too, for the record, if you're more predisposed with that sort of thing as well. Ironically enough, Republicans are accelerating the demise because there was a time when the Democrats did actually work to do right by their constituents, the working class. I mean, they were still racist. There were still plenty of issues, right? But broadly, there was this concept of New Deal Democrats post-FDR that created a wave of social welfare that was so unimaginably successful that it caused the Republicans to concede on this framing. It was a given, okay? It was a given that every Republican had to capitulate to this kind of pro-labor framework. Pro-working class American politics was the norm. Post-Ronald Reagan, what you have seen in the neoliberal era, late-stage capitalism, is the exact opposite of that. Imagine a world where it wasn't the Republicans and their culture war narratives dominating politics, and it's a constant sequence of deregulation and a constant sequence of tax cuts for the super wealthy, super profits, and the working poor, and their material conditions diminish year over year, okay? Think about that. The way that Democrats follow the lead of the Republicans now, that used to be the exact opposite. For a very long time, a period of tremendous prosperity for Americans. It could happen again, but not with the way that the Democratic Party is operating currently.
Kristen. Okay, so, but he's effectively the majority whip, right? I mean, just how he whips these votes, calls people over. It sort of evokes that. It sort of evokes that art that is very. It's difficult, honestly, on the Hill to do, but he's really sort of mastered how to do it and to use his clout with the action of just targeting each individual member. And you see here some of them taking selfies as they are celebrating this moment. He really has whipped these votes, Kristen.
Yeah, and it's not just President Trump. I do think we need to be very clear here. They are using every lever that they have. We know that Senator J.D. Vance has relationships with some of.
Do you think the downfall of America might be good for the global left? No, I don't think so. Because there is no downfall of America, at least in our lifetime. What we will experience is unprecedented violence and chaos and mechanisms of stability in the form of fascism. You're already experiencing that. You're already seeing that. Network of pro-capitalist fascists all around the planet, in the Western world especially, that are taking advantage of this erosion of social safety nets and increasingly gearing up their own populations, their own respective populations, to be more and more ruthless and more angry towards the most vulnerable people. So accelerationism doesn't move in the direction of social unless there is already an existing socialist force that is unavoidable. And we certainly do not have that here in the United States of America. Accelerationism in America leads to fascism. That's it. And the super lame version of fascism that you're experiencing, like this clown-ass fascist nonsense. T-shirts for fat Hitlerites to wear that say alligator Alcatraz on them. You know? That's what we're getting. T-shirts that are ironically made in China, too.
Of these senators. That is how the bill got through the Senate as well. He was having one-on-one meetings with Rand Paul, who again didn't vote for it, but also he was the last person who met with Lisa Murkowski before her critical yes vote. He was working every relationship he had, and it wasn't just him. It was all of the administration, all of the White House, their team up there every single day. And when it comes to the end game here, which of course for some of these House members is getting reelected, for others it's getting this bill passed, it's their agenda, their legacy. I do want to read you one thing that someone told me this morning, and I wrote it down because it goes to show you where his power is. And this was from a lawmaker who told me, Trump is in the strongest position of anyone in generations, probably ever, in terms of impacting primary.
I heard you talk today about Rep's effectiveness and their use of anger people have, in contrast with the Dems, but there's also that they actually use their supermajority to pass whatever they want. They don't have a supermajority. Look, there are structural limitations to the Democrats getting their wishes across as well. Structural limitations such as it's harder to build things as opposed to break them. It's much easier to break shit. This is a 40, 50-year project at this point, which is why it's much easier for the Republicans to, quote unquote, starve the beast since the Ronald Reagan era. Because the worse amenities get, the worse government sponsored programs get, the easier it is to justify destroying them entirely and privatizing them for profit. Okay? It's much, much more difficult, even if there was a willing, true opposition party in the form of the Democratic Party, and they were backed by the people, it is still already a tremendous hurdle to clear to get people to believe in the government, to get people to have common programs again. You understand? But then on top of that, because the Democrats are slaves of the same capital owners that the Republicans are, they're also unwilling to even do this thing. They're unwilling to even demonstrate the to be the fighters that they have to be. So there are structural limitations already, but then there's also a lack of interest. That's why you have this controlled opposition structure in the Democratic Party.
Primaries for Congress. So anyone coming from a hard right district, which is most or likely most of this conference, will have to deal with that. And he's just not going to tolerate people going against his agenda. And that was in the back of the minds of a lot of these members when they were casting this vote. We saw there was this whole scramble last night. I believe it was like midnight or 11, where they were saying, okay, we're not going to vote until tomorrow. We've decided, we're telling them we're not voting until tomorrow. Trump posts on Truth Social, we have the votes, we're going to vote now. Next thing we know, it's going into a vote. I mean, he's...
What's the starving the beast angle for Medicaid? I can't understand what type of moneyed interest would oppose it. It's people who would not be a part of the private insurance market, so it's not them. The hospitals and their investors like it. Who benefits from cutting Medicaid? Is it just cruelty? Any kind of government-sponsored healthcare, any kind of subsidies given to private insurers that, or any kind of government subsidies given to healthcare that is considered government healthcare, is ultimately bad. It's the same principle behind austerity measures that are implemented in places with socialized healthcare systems, so that you can brick the once robust medical coverage that was afforded to every single citizen unconditionally, like in the NHS. Also, making poor people more desperate is good in both the short term and the long term for capital owners, because now they are more desperate to work jobs that they previously wouldn't work. They're so desperate that they'll take on any kind of meager wages that are offered to them with no benefits whatsoever. Part of the reason why we don't have free healthcare and free college education is because if we had free healthcare and free college education, who would join the military? Who would join the military? Why do people join the military right now? They join because they want upward social mobility. They recognize the only way they can get it is through getting a college education. And the only way that they can pay for this incredibly costly endeavor is by selling your body, mind, and soul to the state, to the Pentagon. Same principle behind why people stay at their shitty-ass jobs. There's no lateral movement, because if you lose your job, your healthcare coverage is tied to your job. You no longer have healthcare. it makes it incredibly difficult to leave your job and seek out employment elsewhere. You understand? So there are tremendous benefits for cap term when you make poor people even more desperate, especially when you know that there is no opposing force that is going to use the pain that they are seeing, that they're experiencing, and move them in the direction of anti-capitalist sentiment. This is the problem with the duopoly that we have, where both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans alike, are pro-capital. They're pro-capital, they're capitalists, they like the current system that exists, and they work simultaneously, side by side, to maintain the current system. That's why the Democrats have endless smoke for those who stray away from the pro-capitalist message. Look at the way they're treating Zoran right now, as opposed to how they loved Eric Adams. I'm not even saying that the Democrats need to be a socialist party, okay? They don't even want to be a social democratic party because that requires socialization. Socialization initiatives are inherently against the interests of capital. My dad is a conservative libertarian. Lol, even was like, it's getting to a point where he would vote Democrats because of Trump wrecking everything, but he's like, they're giving me nothing to vote for. Yeah, this provides more context. So much Trumpism is just Mitt Romney with tough guy marketing. The big, beautiful bill, tax cuts for the rich while slashing Medicaid and repealing a bunch of Obamacare, all very Romney 2012. The ICE raids too. Romney's immigration policy came from MAGA diehards Chris Kobach. It is exactly the program you'd expect from a bunch of rich guys who spend their time sneering at the 47%. Yep. Trump is just the logical endpoint of republicanism. He's just the logical conclusion. Even his election denial. His election denialism. How many times did I talk about this? Trump's election denialism is just advancing the previous decades of Republicans doing the same thing. Even reasonable Republicans that were hailed as moderate champions, like Paul Ryan, have engaged in the lie that illegal immigrants are probably voting in these elections. George W. Bush did the same as well. He's just the only guy crazy enough to take it to the next level. And considering that he won the election after the one he lost and did the insurrection on, it was successful. No punishments dished out at all. So he won.
Controlling the narrative, even from just being here at the White House while they're all up on the Hill. And some of that is the way that his team has worked the system. Others that... That's
why I was so ruthless and so vicious when Nancy Parkes would go up on stage and be like, we want to bring back the normal Republican Party. Bro, this is the normal Republican Party. Trump is the normal Republican Party. He is not all that different from the ways that the Republican Party has always operated. The idea that there is a reasonable Republican Party is pure fantasy. It's not real. It's not real at all. That's not a real thing. This is the normal Republican Party. They've always been this way. Trump just has done away with the niceties. That's it. You can't even choose what famous people to have at a party. You only cared about Israel, kicked everyone else out. Nah, dog.
The fact that he has this enormous amount of power over the Republican Party, something that we really haven't seen from a leader in quite some time, to have control over your whole party like that. We certainly did not see it in Trump's first term. There was a lot of factions of the Republican Party. We didn't see it when Biden was in office either. There were factions.
Yeah, right. Trump's JCPOA, the first big, beautiful bill also passed. It was a resounding success, and it passed expeditiously in the same fashion.
The Democratic Party, he has this umbrella power over his conference right now. That is partially the reason that he was able to get this through.
Some of that may have to do with experience from his first term. Kristen, please stand by. Let's go to Lauren Fox on Capitol Hill. Lauren, a very different approach to getting legislation passed from Trump this time around compared to his first term in office.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember the effort to try to repeal and replace Obamacare back in 2017, and there was sort of so many iterations of it on the House side. Obviously, it ultimately failed over in the Senate, but there were so many last-minute requests that came in from the president at the 11th hour during that entire negotiation that members on Capitol Hill would get to kind of a tentative place of agreement, and then all of a sudden something would change with what the administration wanted, and they'd go back and forth and back and forth. I do think one of the most interesting pieces of this is it seemed like from the beginning to the end, the administration was very clear about what their objectives were. They were very clear about what they needed in this bill, and they did give a lot of latitude to both tax writing committees in the Senate and in the House to work their will as well. Obviously, there are pieces of this bill that on the campaign trail, things like a temporary pause on taxes on tips for certain individuals and workers. That is just one of those examples. But there are also pieces of this, like making more of the tax cuts permanent, that were really important to Senate Republicans that became part of this deal. So I think that that is very different than what we saw the first time. I do want to note that one of the more interesting pieces of this is going to be how do Republicans sell this? Because to this point, this bill has not been very popular across the country. And I do wonder if part of that has been so much Republican infighting as they have tried to find a path forward that everyone could live with. Now that they're more unified, now that this bill has passed, do they work together more efficiently to come up with a message to sell this legislation? I think that remains to be seen. You know, they've been arguing that this is a huge tax cut for the American people. Many of these tax cuts are essentially just a continuation of the tax cuts from 2017. I'm going to be really interested to see whether or not Americans really feel that difference, given the fact that those didn't expire and then need to come back, but the fact that this will be a seamless process. But I think that that's going to be something to keep a very close eye on. Meanwhile, Democrats, we know exactly what their message is going to be because Hakeem Jeffries laid it out for 8.5 hours. And I think that those two messages, now we're going to see which one is going to win out in the...
Okay.
Yeah, how we got the holdouts, let me tell you. They promised to kill more